bloody hell are ya? Which is Australian for how are you? Tell me about yourself. It's just the first bit. I just made the second bit up. If you haven't guessed, I'm Australian. I'm Australian born and bred. Speaking of bread, Vegemite bread and butter. But that's the butter to my... Today we're going to be redesigning the label for Vegemite, an Australian favorite, a classic. As an Australian, it's a requirement that we all have Vegemite in our houses at all times, even if you don't like it. It's in our constitution. Do we have a constitution? For all you Aussies out there, and not Aussies, maybe some of you just really like yeast extract. Vegemite has been around for 100 years. That is a long time, and you might have already known that if you're a yeast lover. What I want to do today is I want to change up the label. I want to make it feel a bit brighter, a bit more inviting, a bit younger. I also want to take some key elements from the existing label because there's some really interesting treatment of shapes and form in here that I want to take away and incorporate into a new label. There's parts of the label that I still want to retain, such as the drop shadow on the main logo. That has a lot of heritage. It goes back to the existing label of Vegemite. This is very much more a modern version of it, but the drop shadow is very much still retained back then, and it's a lot thicker and a lot heavier. We also want the label to stand out on the shelf. It's quite a wide label. It contains a lot of information. We only really have the small front portion to work with when it's on shelf. I'm unsure if I want to retain the current colors, the classic red and yellow. I think we can do a modern take on the colors, which will make it feel even more bespoke and more unique and a little bit more fun, a little bit more vibrant. I think we can do it. I think we should, let's get into it. We're going to be using Illustrator today, which is pretty standard for packaging design. Okay, I'm gonna measure up our label, which is 24 centimeters wide. Let's grab a rectangle just to get the measurements of our label. We got 24 centimeters wide for our width of our label, and height is 5.5. We're obviously not gonna use the whole width of the label. We're only gonna be really using the front portion of it. There's a lot of like key info and a lot of statistics and a lot of nutrition information that's on these labels that we don't necessarily need to include. That will be a lot of typesetting, and if you don't have to do it, don't do it. What I want to start off with is looking at some fonts that might work. The current Vegemite is all in uppercase, but it might not necessarily work. I want to go for a font that feels quite blocky, something that's quite strong, but I also am wondering if we can look at something that has sort of softer edges to it to make it feel a little more friendly, a little less aggressive. I reckon we can make it feel a bit nicer. My God, I love Frankfurter. Here's a range of different sans serifs that I think could be really nice to include. I do want to sort of break them down and see what would work above the others. I really love Helvetica Now. I also really love Frankfurter so much. I don't know if it'll necessarily work, but I really like it regardless. I also really love the elements on Bulby that are a bit more organic. I think that's really nice, really interesting. I think we can do something with that there. It still feels slightly hand generated without being too over the top. We could just work with one. That would maybe just choose one font and not 7. Why does there have to be so many good fonts? That's my question. So let's pop these off to the side because maybe we'll use those later, maybe we won't. This is why you never get rid of anything. You always just make duplicates. Let's start playing around. Let's tweak this. Let's do the damn thing and outline the font, which is Command-Shift-O for a shortcut. And maybe because I was talking about having slightly softer edges before, it might be a nice idea to round these, which is just me hitting the direct select tool, which is A, and then you're gonna have these little key lines that are gonna pop up, these indicators. Really subtle, but I still think it gives it a nice touch. Maybe a nice way to retain that drop shadow is to look at creating a more modern version. So we have this really nice heavy outline, but we've still got our type here as well. So let's just group that all together so it's one. I'm gonna create a bit of a drop shadow. I'm going to select both of them. We're gonna jump up to our blend tool, which is W. There's the shortcut. Thanks so much, Adobe. Appreciate you and all you've done for society. and your exorbitant prices on your subscription models. Right, okay, so we're gonna select our two objects and essentially create a blend in between those two objects, which is gonna give us our drop shadow. So we're gonna hit enter, and a fast way to do it is jump into specified steps. We're just gonna make that like 40, 50, 60. And that's gonna create a whole bunch of different middle sections to our font. Maybe just leave that like that. And let's expand our blend that we've just done, because those are the different parts, and our Illustrator is going to hate that if we don't make that one object. So let's make that one object, and now Illustrator won't hate us, which is perfect. Let's slightly stretch it as well, which is the absolute worst thing apparently you can do in graphic design is stretch type. So it's exactly what we're going to do, because that's just how we are. For colors, we can change these up later, but let's just start with this. I moved that in and it feels a little nicer. It feels more condensed. So here's our diamond shape. Let's create a bit of a backing plate to it. I'm just gonna use whatever color for now. I know this isn't the most appealing, but I think it's kind of a good contrast for now. We can change all these up if we need to. Obviously, this middle section is the portion that we'll see from front of shelf. So we kind of wanna keep within those boundaries. What other information can we pull out to include on the label if we need more info? Another thing that used to be its slogan, I don't know if it's still Vegemite's slogan, but Happy Little Vegemite was something that was their catchphrase that I'm very familiar with growing up. There's a song. So I think it'd be nice to include those key info sections, so the different vitamins that are included in this beautiful yeast extract spread. I think that could be nice to pull out. Also maybe Happy Little Vegemite on there somewhere if we need. Let's go right ahead. So we've got Happy Little Vegemite up the top. We've got our biggest claim, which is B vitamins for vitality, which is pretty much like the primary call out. Maybe Happy Little Vegemite is in a script of some description. What a typeface. So I'm still playing around slightly, but we've pulled out the proudly made in Australia since 1923 and down in the bottom right. Currently it sits at the bottom in a default font that looks like some sweet Arial if I've ever seen it. And then we've got our weight on the left-hand side, and I'm thinking that it might be nice to balance it out on top in some capacity. I think this is quite nice. I don't hate it, which is huge for me. I want to do the same treatment that we did with the first logo on Frankfurter. So I want to see what that'll look like. Okay, here's our beveled type. I kind of like it. It's kind of fun. Let's just speed it up a bit. Let's design under stress, because that actually works sometimes. You know what? I think the first one is probably more in keeping, but I still love the second one. Our second one is our wild card, right? So let's duplicate our artboard. Maybe there's some sort of border in the background that reverses out of that diamond pattern we have. That could be kind of interesting. So let's replicate our rounded corners again. Give ourselves a bit more of a border. Let's bring in our key info. That's kind of interesting. Now I feel like there's some structure to this, which feels a lot nicer. Ooh, too far? But even something a little softer could be nice, that sort of mimics the border of the logo. Honestly, I quite like that. Can we get Frankfurter to work in this design? We get away with it? Is it doable? Maybe it'll work if we get color in there. See, this is what happens with design. You just end up with design after design after design with slight changes. But that's good, because you can take elements that worked on the last one and incorporate it. Let's just try it. This is what design's all about. Let's just try it and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, we'll pretend we never tried it. Probably needs to be a different color. Colors that I think could relate. Let's do one version that's in keeping with the current Vegemite label, which is the traditional red and yellow, but it's like a warmer yellow. And then I want to do a couple of other variations. Maybe one is the classic, not classic green and gold, the unofficial colors of Australia. And I'm wondering if we can just do like a rogue one that is like a variation of all different colors. I'm kind of happy with that one. I think it's quite an interesting palette. We've got like a maroon and then a brighter red with a bit more of like a peachy, like a half tone of the red in the middle for the logo. And then I suppose it's like a cooler yellow because any warmer and then I think it would just feel too in keeping with the other one. So I kind of like that there's a bit of contrast there. I wanted to create a happy little Vegemite sticker. That's kind of nice as like an extra little thing. Okay, let's try and do it like a more modern Australia version. Okay, honestly, I don't know really if that works, but I kind of like it. It's kind of interesting. Maybe that's just the brown. Look at that. That feels like vintage. Vintage? Feels like 90s, which I kind of enjoy. Last option, let's do a darker background. Okay, did I need to do 3 color variations of the Vegemite label? No, did I do it anyway? Yes, I did, because I could not help myself. But I think ultimately the most successful one is probably the first one. It's kind of nice to add the that sticker across everything. Let's shuffle this all up. I suppose that doesn't even need to be there really, but I still like the little bit of text. Okay, let's separate. See, that feels kind of nice. God, that feels so vintage, but kind of modern still at the same time. That's kind of what we're going for. Is it possible to use all of them? Because I kind of like all of them. I'm happy with this. So I'm gonna mock these up, and here's everything. Here's the final shebang. Sweet beans. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. I have all my links down below if you are interested in social medias. I post across everything. I'll see you there, or I will see you on another time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.